Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremiah Martell. For this week, I'd like to talk about a movie that meant a lot to me growing up, and one of the social psychology considerations I like to make is that of conformity. Every once in a while, when I'm looking for something inspirational, I always turn to the movie Lean on Me. The movie came out in 1989 and is based on a true story, and though it has some Hollywood elements in it, it does hold up as a strong inspirational story. The main plot of the movie explains how a principal, Joe Clark, was able to turn his school around. It was on the border of being handed over to the state, but he managed to transform and transmogrify it into a well-respected school within the year. In the beginning, he was let go due to funding, and because of the state cutting back fundings, the school started to decline. Over the years, the standards became so low and the economy outside the school became so bad that the students no longer respected their teachers, nor each other. As a result, the school was on the verge of being handed over to the state. They then called back up someone who they thought can turn the school around, this being Joe Clark, as a final attempt to bring the test scores up. One thing that the newly appointed principal called for was conformity. What is conformity? Conformity is when people change their attitudes or behaviors to match what they think most people will like them to think or do. Solomon Asch had conducted experiments where he would have students come in as Confederates and answer questions that were wrong, and the participant would either keep their answer or change it to align with the others. In the beginning of the experiment, they were all shown a line, and then they would have to visually compare it to another line. After a while, they would start getting the answers wrong. But the more they were all in agreement, the more the participant, who didn't even know he was the only one, would begin siding with the choice as everyone else. The participant would align with the others' answers to avoid feeling like an outcast. What does this have to do with conformity? One of the first things that the principal did was expel everyone who had made no positive contribution to the school. He understood early on that not everyone can be saved. In one of the meetings with the parents, he stated, "One bad apple can spoil a bunch, but what about 300?" In a sense, he already saw Solomon Ash's experiment taking effect because he knows the rest of the students have the potential to do better. Moreover, consider him turning the experiment in a way that actually benefits the students. If he can get more people on track to graduate without interference, then perhaps more students will follow suit. And that is exactly what happened. He also called for conformity, not just from the students, but the faculty members as well. He encouraged, or rather required, everyone to hold themselves to a higher standard. The majority of the teachers were told to give all the names of those who were to be expelled. Those who defied his authority was later dismissed. One of the teachers, who did not take his authority seriously, was soon fired due to insubordination. This provided not just the students the need to conform to his standards, but the teachers as well. This might have even reinforced the students to conformity because they see the principal setting his teachers to the same standards. The principal also implements conformity by having everyone dress more appropriately and putting in the extra mile in their studying. He showed how some students seemed okay to dress in an ill manner and ostracized them for it, causing embarrassment with that student. Though the student was resilient with insults, he did take his lack of good appearance to heart and changed his fashion style. Students were also encouraged to clean up and beautify the school. In the beginning of the movie, you see how the school was well put together and in some cases traditional, but very clean. Then as the school went into disarray, you can see everything as total chaos. But as they put the school back together, one thing you see is how students provided thematic artwork, which was never explained why the principal allowed them to do it, but it did provide a positive artistic outlet for the students, and it did raise their spirits. Speaking of spirits and the way the school was beginning to look, the school song was changed as well. The principal had wanted the students to learn the song, or else disciplinary actions were to be taken. One day the principal had challenged the students to sing the school song and they had sung it in a different way. They had thought the song to be too boring, and the principal allowed the song to be changed. But yet he still wanted everyone to learn how to sing it on demand. One thing to note was that he followed up with what he had said. He would occasionally go to students and tell them to start singing. If he saw that the students were at least trying their best, he'd grant them some leniency, but would give his remarks, which the students began to value more and more each day. The end result was a transformed school, where all the students could be seated quietly in an assembly, waiting patiently for further instruction. They do this for both the respect they had for principal as well as the future they know they can now have. The principal managed to turn a violent and failing school into a compliant and succeeding school. When working with the school, he managed to uphold conformity, but in a more constructive way. He provided the standards for everyone to uphold, disciplined those who defied him, and provided more help and encouragement to those who did conform. Conformity is getting everyone to adopt and adhere to the opinions and behaviors of others. And in this case, it is the principal who is conforming a school of 3,000 students. He did this by first removing the distraction of all those unwilling to learn. Then he had the entire school get cleaned up by the students themselves. As the students began to show more self-respect for themselves, everyone ended up conforming. They didn't have the fear of being punished, rather the fear of letting their peers down as well as their principal. This was an inspirational movie, but when looking at this in a social psychology perspective, this would be a great experiment to try in schools and communities on the brink of failing. Are we capable of making this happen? If so, should we do this? Thank you for your time and consideration. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have for me.